18.1 Oligopoly. This chapter covers following topics: meaning of oligopoly, characteristics of oligopoly, which includes a few large producers, homogeneous or differentiated products, control over price but mutual interdependence, temptation to collude or merger, entry barrier natural and legal, identifying oligopoly. Oligopoly is a market structure dominated by a few large firms of a homogeneous or differentiated product. Because of their fewness, oligopolists have considerable control over their prices, but each must consider the possible reaction of rivals to its own pricing, output, and advertising decisions. Characteristics of oligopoly market: a few large producers. Oligopoly encompasses the US aluminum industry, in which three huge firms dominate an entire national market, and the situation in which four or five much smaller auto parts stores enjoy roughly equal share of the market in a medium-sized town. Generally, however, when you hear a term such as Big Three, Big Four, or Big Six, you can be sure it refers to the oligopolist industry. An oligopoly may be either a homogeneous oligopoly or a differentiated oligopoly, depending on whether the firms in the oligopoly produce standardized or homogeneous or differentiated products. Many industrial products, steel, zinc, copper, aluminum, lead, cement, industrial alcohol, are virtually standardized products that are produced in oligopolies. Alternatively, many consumer goods industries, automobiles, tires, household appliances, electronic equipments, breakfast cereals, cigarettes, and many sporting goods are differentiated oligopolies. These differentiated oligopolies typically engage in considerable non-price competition supported by heavy advertising. Control over price but mutual interdependence. Because firms are few in oligopolist industries, each firm is a price maker. Like the monopolist, it can set its price and output levels to maximize its profit. But unlike the monopolist, which has no rivals, the oligopolist must consider how its rivals will react to any change in its price, output, product characteristics, or advertising. Oligopoly is thus characterized by strategic behavior and mutual interdependence. By strategic behavior, mean a situation in which a person, when choosing among alternative courses of action, must consider how others might respond to the action he takes. In making its production decision, each firm in an oligopoly should consider how its decision might affect the production decision of all the other firms. Mutual interdependence, a situation in which each firm's profit depends not just on its own price and sales strategies, but also on of the other firms in its highly concentrated industry. So, oligopolist firms base their decisions on how they think their rivals will react. Example: in deciding whether to increase the price of its cosmetics, L'Oreal will try to predict the response of the other major producers such as Clinique. Second example, in deciding on its advertising strategy, Burger King will take into consideration how McDonald's might react. Temptation to collude or merger. When a small number of firms share a market, they can increase their profit by forming a cartel and acting like a monopoly. A cartel is a group of firms acting together, colluding to limit output, raise price, and increase economic profit. Cartels are illegal in the United States, although international cartels can operate legally. Even when there is no formal cartel, firms might try to operate like a cartel. Entry barriers. Either natural or legal barriers to entry can create oligopoly. Economies of scale or natural barriers are important entry barriers in a number of oligopolist industries, such as aircraft, rubber, and copper industries. In those industries, 3 or 4 firms might each have sufficient sales to achieve economies of scale, but new firms would have such a small market share that they could not do so. They would then be high-cost producers, and as such, they could not survive. A closely related barrier is the large expenditure for capital, the cost of obtaining necessary plant and equipment required for entering certain industries. The jet engine, automobile, commercial aircraft, and petroleum refining industries, for example, are all characterized by very high capital requirements. In the figure A, the efficient scale of one firm is 30 rides a day. The lowest price at which the firm would remain in business is $10 a ride. At that price, the quantity of rides demanded is 60 a day, the quantity that can be provided by just 2 firms. There is no room in this market for 3 firms. To sell more than 60 rides a day, the price would have to fall below $10 a ride. But then the firms would incur an economic loss, and one of them would exist. If there were only one firm, it would make an economic profit, and the second firm would enter to take some of the business and economic profit. If the average total cost curve of a taxi company is ATC2 in part B, the efficient scale of one firm is 20 rides a day. This market is large enough for 3 firms, but it is not large enough for the 4th firm. Economies of scale limit the market to some because each firm would incur an economic loss if there were 4 of them. And this market will not operate with 2 firms because with only 2, economic profit would encourage the entry of a 3rd firm. The ownership and control of raw materials help explain why oligopoly exists in many mining industries including gold, silver and copper. Legal barriers like patents have served as entry barriers in the computer, chemicals, consumer electronics and pharmaceutical industries. A city might license 2 taxi firms or 2 bus companies, for example, even though the combination of market demand economies of scale leaves room for more than 2 firms. When barriers to entry create an oligopoly, firms can make an economic profit in the long run without fear of triggering the entry of additional firms. Identifying oligopoly. As a practical matter, we try to identify oligopoly by looking at the 4-firm concentration ratio and the Huffington-Hirschman Index (HHI). A market in which the HHI lies between 1,000 and 2,500 is usually an example of monopolistic competition, and a market in which the HHI exceeds 2,500 is usually an example of oligopoly.